versus just hoping that this is a new bull market in the altcoins. But certainly interesting stuff on the charts, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, returning to the breakdown point is something that actually we saw with ADA a few weeks ago, right? So you mentioned like the Bitcoin, and we talked about this previously as well. Like, when we get this rally, it could return to sort of where it broke down from.
Is this the beginning of a new bull market? That's the big question on everyone's mind in the crypto world right now. And in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the charts and data to try to answer that question with Gareth Soloway. Gareth Soloway is a renowned figure in the crypto trading world. He is the co-founder of Verified Investing1, a platform that offers expert education, trade alerts, market updates, and technical analysis for stock and crypto trading. Soloway provides real-time alerts from expert analysts, clear entry/exit points, stop-loss levels, and profit targets. His service has a historically incredible 95% plus win rate since its launch. He also offers a dynamic new course jam-packed with knowledge, skills, and behind-the-scenes information to help traders excel and succeed in crypto. We'll be looking at Bitcoin, altcoins, the dollar, and more to get a sense of where the market is headed. So if you're wondering whether this is the time to buy, sell, or hold, be sure to stick around for the whole video and let's get started.
I'm in the position of saying, like Ben, it's probably smarter to take profits on this run, inch in, inch out a little bit, let it run a little bit more, inch out, versus just hoping that this is a new bull market in the altcoins. But certainly interesting stuff on the charts, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, returning to the breakdown point is something that actually we saw with ADA a few weeks ago, right? So you mentioned like the Bitcoin, and we talked about this previously as well. Like, when we get this rally, it could return to sort of where it broke down from, right? And actually, ADA did that exact thing not that long ago, right? So if we remember this dump over here that we got in June, and then we look what happened with ADA, right? It retraced all the way back up to where the breakdown point occurred, right? It sort of swept that level, only to then go all the way back down. I think it's important to point out with ADA as well on a larger time frame is that we've been sort of bouncing off of these lows for a long time, right? And this bounce here, that weekly candle, that was a 19% move off of that low. This one here, this is at a 12% move. This one last week, a 9% move. So to me, what it looks like we're just continuing to put in these, lower highs, and that eventually this could easily, break the downside. Right now, again, right now, no one wants to believe that because we are in the middle of a move up. It was only like a month or two ago where a 27-cent ADA would have been seen as very bearish, right? And now it's being seen as a very bullish thing. So yeah, I'm still in the same camp. And if you look at the altcoin market sort of collectively, right, what we'll notice is that it still is below the 50-week moving average, which is something that it hasn't really been able to sustainably break above. And I believe it's also below the 20-week SMA or the bull marks for the 21-week EMA and the 20-week. So you can see it's still right around there. So look, at this point, I think it's more likely to be a lower high than anything else, right? And so this high over here for total 3, the altcoin market was all the way up at around 378 billion. On that high, a lot of people flooded into the altcoin market because this is fundamentally changing everything and there's no way alts can go lower. And then look what happened, right? We just completely faded back down. And so I still unfortunately have to be in that camp that this is just lower highs until proven otherwise. And, in the same way, if we keep testing this trend line here, we could eventually break down below it.
What are your thoughts on the dollar?
I mean, I think it's a combination of all of that. I think that this is just a search for lower risk stuff. And the U.S. economy, while I think it is showing some signs of weakness, it's not as weak as, say, its counterparts elsewhere. And so people are seeking the relative safety of the dollar. And I think the issue with that is, the thing too, is that we know liquidity is drying up. And when liquidity dries up, cash can be a safe haven, right? I mean, that cash can be seen as king at various phases of the market cycle when asset prices are going down. And remember, the Fed wants asset prices to go down because they're not going to say that, but it would be great in terms of getting inflation back down. when is the last time the dollar put in 12 green weeks in a row, right? I mean, I don't know if this is going to be a 12th green week or not. We'll have to wait and see. But believe it or not, the last time I think was over here in 2014, right? I believe this was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So like at least a dozen green weeks in a row. And then what happened, right? At some point we got a little bit of a pullback here on the dollar, which I'm sure led to a lot of people thinking, all right, now it's going to go back down. But then it just continued to shoot up, right, into the early part of 2015. At this point, I think markets are sort of discounting it and saying, all right, it's no big deal. It's still well away from the highs. What if we fast forward 3 or 4 months and now we're way up here? I think that is a likely scenario. And Gareth, this is probably one of the things that is going to force the Fed to pivot, I think, in 2024, is that there's not going to be liquidity, and that I think the dollar is going to force them to.
I mean, we know basically one of the things I'll bring up is we know that in March, banks essentially collapsed Silicon Valley because the yields were basically hitting 4%. Well, now you're approaching 5%, and we know the housing market has essentially not decimated in terms of prices collapsing, but it's just frozen. It's frozen at this point. Unless you're a cash buyer, then you can do something. But again, that's about it here. And then just going back to the dollar, I wanted to show this chart. This is an amazing trend line on the weekly dollar chart. And again, we see the 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and we're now on the 12th green candle. We are approaching this trend line again. And we can see over here it pulled back. Here when it hit, it bounced. Over here, it kept on bouncing off. So this is a great long-term trend line going back to 2021. We go back to 2014. Here's that move up, 12 weeks up in a row. I actually used it just to the measured move here, about 8%, just over 8%. And what's interesting here is if we replicate that 8% move here, right, we get essentially just above that trend line. So a pierce of that trend line right there. All we can do is guess about things, but I would think you and I would be in the agreement is that you're probably getting to at least some sort of minor pullback like we saw in 2014. And we have the trend line here and the measured move to kind of replicate and give us that synopsis. Is it just going to be a small pullback before we rip higher, or will it be a top where we start to head back down?
Was that pullback? I'm just curious. I don't remember. It was the pullback in 2014. Did it occur in mid-October? I feel like I remember the question.
Yeah, let's take a look. Yes. Okay. Wow, that's freaky.
Yeah, mid-October, and we're about there. And what's also interesting, by the way, is look at the I have the euro chart up against the USD against the US dollar.
Bring that up.
This looks like these distribution phases where you get sort of like 1, 2, 3, and I'm thinking, all right, well, the dollar. I mean, 12 green weeks in a row, right? Like I've been very bullish on the dollar for a long time, but even those bullish people on it, right? We're going to admit that at some point it's going to have a pullback, right? Like nothing, the markets move stochastically. Like, well, at some point, I guess what would happen is the euro could bounce back against the dollar, right? And maybe it even backtests this or something, right? And then it continues to go down. And so I would wonder if you get a point where the dollar starts to pull back, but when it does pull back, maybe at that point, Bitcoin is actually starting to pull back itself. People are going to be like, well, why is Bitcoin pulling back if the dollar is down? It's because people are starting to worry about the next move by the dollar, not the one that it's currently in. And yeah, so I think that's the thing to look at is if the dollar gets this pullback in mid-October, just like it did in 2014, what happens in November, December as the Fed keeps draining